Hey guys, what's going on? It's Looeelooee here, and I am back with another VOD review. I know it's been a while since I uploaded, but I have been very busy recently with college and with my own training. However, I do try to get to making these videos whenever I have free time. Anyway, today I have some clips sent to me by a player called Ty. He used to be a one-sided penhold player, but has recently switched to shakehand and feels his technique is really awkward and lacks power. He sent me 9 clips of kind of different various training exercises, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and go through all of these videos one by one and try to point out whatever I can in terms of technique, and then after I've gone through every clip I will also try to give some equipment recommendations. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so the first clip we have is of a pretty regular 2 backhand, 2 forehand exercise. Turn that down a little bit, and let's go ahead and take a look. Alright, so a couple things. First thing that I noticed right away is on the backhand, your shoulders are not completely square to where you're aiming. So your left leg should actually be just a little bit more forwards when you're playing this shot. That's going to do 2 things. First, that's going to help your shoulders stay more square to the corner. It'll increase your accuracy. Second, it'll make it easier to transition to your forehand because you're just going to be moving your feet, and you're not going to have to transition your feet from right leg forwards to left leg forwards as well. And actually there's a third thing as well. It's going to limit the sideways movement that you have on your backhand motion. And this is actually the biggest problem I saw. So you can see it best from this camera angle. You have a lot of shoulder movement and a lot of elbow movement, and your shot's kind of finishing off to the side here. Really, there shouldn't be too much extra movement, too much backswing, or too much follow through. I'll put some clips up on the screen right now of my own backhand and kind of how it should look like. And you can see it kind of stops really early in front of my body, and my shoulders and my whole body are aligned to the corner as I play that shot. But the shoulders should be pretty much stationary. You don't want to be extending too much, and the main motion should be rotating with your elbow and maybe just a little bit of wrist, but you don't want your shoulder to be kind of swaying all over the place as well to the side. That's going to make your recovery a little bit slower. It's going to make the shot a little bit less sharp as well. And then on the forehand, there were a couple of things I saw as well. So mainly the form is actually pretty good on the forehand. The main thing is that I wish it was a little bit sharper. So where you finish every shot changes just a little bit every time you play. So there it was a little bit lower. The time before that it was a little bit higher. As a rule of thumb, you want to be stopping with the head of your racket kind of in front of your left eyebrow, and your racket angle should be pretty much the same when you started as when you finished. That's going to keep the form sharp. And then the peak amount of acceleration should be as you make contact with the ball. So you don't want this kind of uniform speed throughout your swing. Limit the size of your backswing, meet the ball to the paddle, and right at the moment of contact is when you should have the most amount of acceleration, and then you can follow through to your left eyebrow, stop, and come back sharp to where you want to start again. And actually I can say the same thing on the backhand. Once you finish your backhand, try not to kind of sway your arm in a circle to come back to your backhand. Finish your backhand and then come back sharp without making a circle to exactly where you started, and that's going to speed up your recovery time and just make both shots a little bit crisper. Alright, moving on to the second clip, we have backhand counter hit. I'm assuming counter loop, or okay, backhand topspin against topspin it looks like. So let's go ahead and take a look. This camera angle, by the way, is a lot better than the camera angle you were using in the last clip. Much easier for me to see everything going on with the technique. You kind of have the same problem though. So your base form on the backhand isn't bad, but you're making a circle with your arm when you recover instead of coming straight back to where you started. You also have a little bit too much sideways movement as you follow through, a little bit too much shoulder kind of reaching and drifting out to the side. This part of your arm really shouldn't be moving too much. It should be still. And it should just kind of be your elbow rotating. You can see where your paddle's finishing. The face of your racket right now is pointing to the window over here. That's way too far to the side when you finish. It should be pointing much more forwards, and your arm should not be this far away from your body as you finish the shot. It should be a little bit more compact. Another thing is, even when you're counter looping or playing against topspin, you can be a little bit closer to the table. I would say you can take a full step in and still play this shot. The kind of rule of thumb is you need to be as close as possible while being 100% sure that if your opponent's shot hits the white line, you can still cover that ball. Any further back, unless you're playing someone that's really giving you a lot of pressure and power, it's just unnecessary and gives your opponent more time to react, lowers the quality of your own shot. But yeah, aside from what I said, just similar problems to what I saw in the first clip. A little bit too much sideways sway, especially on that last shot. You can see it there as you walk away. That big sideways sweeping follow through. Just not a very sharp shot. So definitely something that you're going to want to work on. Alright, third clip is backhand loop away from the table. I know I just talked about staying close to the table, but there is a time and place for playing back. And when you're playing someone that gives you a lot of pressure, sometimes you do need to go back and loop. So let's go ahead and see what's going on in this clip. So your actual form here, the motion of your elbow is actually better than it was closer to the table. This like sharp rotation, when you're close to the table, you still want that sharp rotation, just on a much more compact scale. For this shot specifically, this is still, even though you're far back, this is still way too big for away from the table. You're using a lot of arm to get your power. I would say try to rotate your core and transfer your weight from your left leg to your right leg as you play this shot to get a little bit more power. And then also pull your wrist back a little bit more when you start to swing. Your head of your racket should be a little bit further in here. So you pull your wrist back a little bit. You can pull it back more to where your head of your racket's kind of pointing towards your stomach. And it should be your wrist that goes first and your arm that goes second. What it looks like here is kind of you're leading with your arm and reaching for the ball and using your big motion to get the ball on the table and give you a little bit of power. But you need to try and make the same power in a much more compact shot. But the actual form here does look better than it did close to the table. This rotation here, especially the recovery here is much sharper, and you want to mimic that close to the table, again, just on a much more compact scale. Alright, next clip is backhand looping against underspin. So a very important shot, especially in kind of the modern era of table tennis. And I'd say one of the key shots to getting your game to kind of that next higher level of play. So let's go ahead and see what's going on here. Oh, and actually, I know that wasn't part of the drill, but that push that you played on the first shot, you should have played it a little bit sharper with a slightly more open racket, and kind of moved your elbow from a bent position to a straighter position. But that's another shot for another time. Hopefully I see a little bit more pushing or short touching in some of these clips, but let's go ahead and take a look at the loop. So actually right off the bat, couple of things. You're still too far back, way too far back for this shot. You could probably be, if you look at the squares on the floor, you could be a whole square closer to the table and still play this shot, and it would be higher quality, and it would be less effort on your part Your form is also coming a little bit too far up, so as you play your backhand, your paddle was kind of starting here, and it made like a sweeping motion. If you follow my mouse, it looked like this. It should look either like this, or even a little bit like this, where you come around the top of the ball, but your racket angle was actually becoming more open as you played the shot. It should be doing the opposite, coming more closed. So that sweeping motion, it's kind of old-fashioned technique, and it's going to be a lower quality shot and a harder to play shot than just staying a little bit closer, keeping your form more compact and coming forwards. You should be hitting closer to the top of the ball than the back or the underside of the ball. Really try to get on top of it. That's how you're going to be able to generate a lot of topspin on that shot. So you can see this sweeping motion that looks like this, and it kind of drifts to the side as well. It should be from here forwards, just forwards, or over the top of the ball, and you can't do that from this far away from the table. You need to be maybe even 1.5 squares closer than where you are right now, and then you can start here, finish here, and you're not going to be reaching for the ball. This far back against an underspin ball, the only way to play is by reaching like that and having kind of this giant form, and it just makes it so much more difficult for yourself to play. So yeah, like I said, go ahead and look at the examples I put on screen, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about there. Alright, next clip just says backhand topspin, so let's go ahead and see what this is. So it looks like this is just a backhand drive, and it's the exact same problems as all the other backhands, just way too far back, way too big, a little bit too much sideways motion, and too much follow through. So you, again, need to be 1 or 2 squares closer to the table, same thing as I covered before. Okay, next we have Falkenberg. This is one of my favorite footwork exercises. I use this all the time. It's a great way to practice all your shots and footwork at the same time. So let's go ahead and take a look. So the biggest thing I see right now is from your transition to your from your backhand to your first forehand, you have a little bit of a weird follow through going on. Give me 1 sec. I don't think I can. Yeah, here we go. So as you finish your backhand, you'll see that you lift your paddle up again before you transition to your forehand. So, sorry. Here's your backhand. You finish. Now your paddle's still going up. Still going up. The ball's coming. Your paddle's still by your head. And now it's down here for your forehand. And then there the recovery is much better from your forehand to your forehand. And your forehand to your backhand. And then again there on the backhand you see it again. The paddle comes up before it comes back to your forehand. So you need to make sure from that backhand when you finish there, paddle just comes straight down to your forehand. You don't need to come up and make a circle and kind of wrap around to your forehand. It's just wasting time for no reason. So really, really small thing, something that's really hard to pick up on, but it makes a huge difference when you're playing in a sport where 1/10 of a second or even less can make the difference between playing a high quality shot or playing a low quality shot or just outright missing. And then again, it's kind of the same things as I covered before. Your footwork is actually very good. No problems here. Moving your feet the right way. I would like to see a little bit more bouncing, but that's a very, very minor thing that you'll get better with over time. But again, the main thing, your forehand looks pretty good. Your backhand is too big and has a little bit too much of that sweeping sideways motion. I would like to see the forehand be a little bit crisper, a little bit sharper, instead of kind of just a swooping motion where you're meeting the paddle to the ball. Meet the paddle to the ball, and then right at the moment of contact, add just a little bit more acceleration, and your quality will be so much better on that shot. Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next clip. Alright, next shot is the forehand counter hit. If you guys know me personally, you know this is my absolute favorite shot in table tennis. This is my go-to kind of flashy shot if I just want to go for a nice point. So let's go ahead and take a look. So actually, here, and this is a softer counter, you have the same problem with the recovery that you were having when you transitioned from your forehand to your backhand. You have this kind of unnecessary movement at the top of your shot before you come back. Very, very minor, but you need to just stop by your left eyebrow and come back. And similar to what I was talking about before, you're finishing at very, very slightly different points every forehand. Sometimes you finish here, sometimes you finish here, sometimes you finish here, sometimes you're up here. And those tiny differences make variations in your own shot hurt your feeling as you're playing and lowers your consistency. So make sure you're finishing at the same spot, and then once you finish, you don't want this unnecessary kind of like wrist sway. You've already made contact with the ball. If you're using any wrist movement, it should be down here as you make contact. Then you should be trying to stop your form and just come back. And like I mentioned before, right as you make contact with the ball, especially on the counter loop, you need more acceleration. When you're countering, you shouldn't be dropping the paddle at all. Maybe like a tiny amount, but you should basically be holding the paddle out to your side, waiting, no paddle movement at all, waiting till you feel the ball on your rubber, and then right as you feel the ball on your rubber, just accelerate hard forwards with no backswing. And that's kind of the best way to play that close to the table counter loop. And then again, here on the forehand, if you are playing a counter, it doesn't look like you're going for the away from the table shot. You have a pretty small form. You can play this shot from closer to the table and take it a little bit earlier, and you won't have to reach as much. But overall, I know I'm making a lot of criticisms. The form is actually not bad. These are just really small things that will help you out in the long run. But yeah, your forehand does look pretty good. Alright, here's the bread and butter shot, forehand loop against underspin. If you master this shot, you're immediately going to go through any beginner, intermediate level players. So let's go ahead and see what's going on. And I think I might be right on this. I want to wait for the camera to change so I can see your depth. You are a little bit too far back. Not as bad as it was on the backhand, but you can still be a little bit closer for this shot. You also want a little bit more separation between your elbow and your body. It's hard to see from the camera angle, but it looks like your elbow, especially when you start, is almost touching your shirt. And if you gave it just a little bit more separation and kept that separation throughout your shot, you'd have a little bit more effortless power because you would have more natural torque from your arm. And just like the backhand, this is actually old-fashioned technique. Modern table tennis, so you're kind of starting here and swooping up on the ball, hitting right on the back of the ball to lift it up and give it topspin. In the early 2000s, late 90s, this is textbook, but now you need to stay closer, keep your form smaller, and either come over the back of the ball and then the top of the ball, or just come straight over the top of the ball forwards. And the only way to do that is close to the tables. The backswing is small. You can still have that bigger follow through, finish by your left eyebrow, but you're coming forwards over the top of the ball, not swooping up on the back of the ball. So your racketing shouldn't be getting more open as you play. It should be staying the same, closed when you start, closed when you finish. And then just like with your forehand counter and pretty much your other forehands, you don't want this swing speed to be linear. Right at the moment of contact should be your peak amount of acceleration, where you're trying to just generate as much spin as possible. But right now it looks like you kind of have a consistent racket speed, and that doesn't change as you make contact. You're almost just swooping the paddle to the ball and hoping you had enough racket speed to get it there in the first place. That's not how you want to go about looping. You want to like wait, ball's on your rubber, and then bang, you accelerate hard to create that topspin and get the ball over the net. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next clip. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to the last clip. It just says forehand topspin, so I'm assuming it's like a away from the table forehand loop or just regular forehand drive. Let's go ahead and take a look. So it looks like you're a little bit further back, and it looks like you're kind of counter looping on your forehand now. And it's pretty much the same problems as before. Your form actually looks a little bit better here, but your racket angle is still kind of swooping up as you play, and you still have that little bit of unnecessary movement. Like you finish your shot, then you finish it again, and then you come back instead of just finishing your shot and coming straight back. But actually your form here doesn't look bad at all. Pretty crisp technique. I still would like to see more acceleration at the moment of contact. Right as the ball's on your paddle should be when you're adding the most power to get that spin generation, and really try to come over the top of the ball more instead of coming kind of around the ball through the back of the ball and lifting up. This is kind of old-fashioned technique, and it's going to work, but it's lower quality, and it's going to be harder for you to play this way than a little bit shorter technique over the top of the ball with more acceleration. Alright, now before we wrap up the video, I do want to go ahead and talk about equipment a little bit, and this is a very good example of where I think equipment is hindering your game. So the blade is the T-Bar E levers, and it's just a hard, flexy, 5-ply all-wood blade. I looked it up, it looks like a pretty typical blade. Nothing wrong with it, but the rubbers I do want to talk about. So you have Hurricane 3 Neo 37 degree on your backhand, and then you have 729 Focus 2, which is a hard Chinese rubber on your forehand. And I think you would benefit on both sides from getting away from Chinese rubbers. You cannot, and I've said this in so many videos, you should not be using Chinese rubbers unless you have Chinese coaching and a very, very, very specific technique on your forehand, which involves very, very hard wrist movement and acceleration right at the moment of contact. And if you don't have that, then all you're going to find with these Chinese rubbers is that they're more unforgiving and much more difficult to play with. You would be much better off with either a hybrid rubber where you have kind of a tacky top sheet and springy sponge, or just a regular tensor or Japanese rubber. So some recommendations would be the Vega series from Exium, great offensive rubbers that are really cheap, or the Rosanna rubber from Butterfly, again, very cheap rubber with just a very standard top sheet. And what you're going to find with these types of rubbers is that when you have slow spinny loops, the rubber is going to help you with that extra acceleration, and when you swing hard, they're still going to move the way you would want them to. So yeah, these hard Chinese rubbers are only really, really good when you have extreme acceleration. Even the Neo 37 on the back end, it's a tacky rubber, and 37 degrees on the Chinese scale is pretty hard, so it's still going to be unforgiving and demand that pretty powerful swing. And this might be why you feel like you need to go so much up on your strokes instead of forwards. So yeah, I would strongly recommend getting away from these Chinese rubbers and trying something else. I'll put some of my recommendations in the description down below. And then if you do want a blade recommendation, I don't think there's anything wrong with the blade you have. If you wanted to go a notch faster but not go overkill, then you might want to try an interlayer carbon blade, which is a blade with carbon fiber where the carbon is closer to the core than the outside, so it's still going to have that wood-like feeling, but it's going to be a little bit stiffer and give you a little bit more power. And again, I'll give some recommendations of those blades in the description below. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, then make sure to drop a like. And if you guys have any videos that you want me to send you to review, take a look at, give some advice, anything like that, then please send them to me via the link that will be in the description and also in the comment section. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time. Adios.